Alright guys, so I've been doing a bit more of these servant evaluations instead of just doing another review for them because I've reviewed most of these servants in the game by this point and it worked pretty well for the Melusine video. A lot of people did enjoy getting more of an evaluation for a servant I've used a bit extensively, so we're going to do the same thing for Meltryllis over here, who is on rate up right now over on the NA version of the game. And if you're wondering if this servant is worth pulling, I could not give her any more of a shining review. As I kind of showed in my extra class tier list, I am an absolute huge fan of Meltryllis. I don't really have very many faults with the unit. In fact, the only thing that I guess I could maybe criticize her for is that, well, I'm showing that you can use her in farming in one of these gameplay videos. It'll pop up at some point, but she's gonna get a 30% battery in a couple of months over here when we get the Seraph Holy Grail front, right? So she's going to get a 30% battery, and that fixes pretty much the one thing I don't think she can do, because she's rocking double hits of evasion, which is very nice for being able to just keep herself around. She has just solid offensive buffs in the fact that she just has a good 30% attack buff. She has a strong 30% NP damage buff. Sure, it's only for 2 turns, but better that than it being a 1-turn buff, as well as it's also neutering the entire enemy party's NP damage. It also does that for your party, but who actually cares about that? It's not like you're going to be firing a Scotty NP or anything. I mean, sure, Ruler Scotty comes out and you might be like, well, she's just going to have no damage. Look, you're using the support to support. You're not using them to do damage. And I guess you could say that she lowers her own defense, but dog, it is by 10%. It is negligible at best. And then they also, for her last upgrade they gave her a bit ago, she gets an on attack before she can just start ramping up her crit damage. And unlike some of these other units where you got to use maybe a specific card, like a buster card or a quick card, or it has to be a crit for you to start building things up, it's just if Melt attacks. So just by using her normally, and I guess if you want to bring her as a solo unit, if you bring her for that, she's just going to start stacking ridiculous amounts of crit damage very, very quickly. Keep in mind that 50% is kind of the norm for where you would expect a unit to have for crit damage nowadays, and she can almost get that in a turn. It's stupid ridiculous. It's so good. It allows her to not only do some really solid NP damage, but also crit very, very hard. And then speaking of NP damage, the fact that she just removes all enemy buffs and she stacks quick buffs over here, I think is the icing on the cake, because it's not only buffing up the damage for her quick crits, but it's also stacking her NP gain, making it easier for a follow-up NP with her pretty solid 4-hit quick cards. Again, not the craziest, but they did splurge and give her 0.92% NP gain, so you're already raising your already high NP gain average, and then they chucked her a battery as her next buff. So not only does it make it a lot more convenient, I will say, whenever you're going into a fight, because usually you do pop Crime Ballet first, the double dodge skill, because you just want to have some dodges, a little bit of protection as you're starting out. It also gives you a couple of stars, but now it's making it that much easier to fire your NP as well, which I absolutely love. I mean, there are situations where you're using Meltryllis going into a fight that, you know, maybe you don't want to have to waste the 50% battery from one of your Scotties, right? Or you just want to use, if you're bringing, say, Oberon, you just want to use his first skill. Well, that 20% with this 30% pairs very nicely with any other 50% starting CE, so you can just immediately start firing. Because, you know, there are some people that, I forget the CE's name, I'm losing it off the top of the dome, but it's the Sakura Summer CE that I know some people are still having to use because they don't really have a better quick CE. But starting off 50% and getting yourself decent buffs allows you to just fire NP immediately. So it's just good. And we'll always have very, very strong 50% starting charge CEs. I mean, even if you don't have, you know, a quick 50% starting charge one, you can always use like the Drinking Jolter CE, right, as I call it. And so I really can't recommend this unit enough. There's not a whole lot that I have to complain about this one. I mean, even for the Melusine video, I kind of had to nitpick things every, you know, like little bits here and there, because when I think really highly of a servant, I have to kind of look at them under the magnifying glass with a little bit more scrutiny. Because if I'm going to say that they're one of the better units for you to use in the game, and I do think they're worth summoning for, then at that point, you know, I'm going to be like, well, what can I warn people about? Well, for one, there is her classing as an alter ego, which I think will help a lot of people out a lot, because if you do not have, say, someone like Sanzo or someone like Ilya as your dedicated, you know, DPS caster, you can use somebody like Melts over here instead to kind of chunk your assassins. You know, if you don't have a good single target assassin, i.e. pretty much just Kama, you can use her to take out riders, you know. If you don't have an Ozymandias, a Quetzalcoatl to take out casters, Melt is definitely your girl for that. You still would like to bring somebody with class advantage because it's not just about the offensive bonus, but also the defensive bonus, and she takes neutral to all those people, but it's also nice that you can bring her to go fight foreigners and other alter egos. It's just very useful to have in your account. And the fact that she's also very good, it doesn't make it feel bad to use her, but you can't really rely on her for everything because unfortunately, as good as the alter ego classing is, I've definitely come around to it a lot more over the years. The only unfortunate thing is still that you can't bring her to go fight sabers, archers, and lancers, which, I mean, is always going to be the case. I mean, you could do it, right? You could do that, like, if you were really, setting your mind up to do that, but you're going to be doing significantly less damage, right? And so that can be very unfortunate for Meltryllis. You can't really rely on her as being, your one go-to person for every single boss fight in the game. But there's not many servants that can fulfill that condition anyway. And again, if we're kind of like nitpicking a little bit, that's kind of, I guess, the only one I could really offer. But even her base damage, no buffs, no power mods or anything, she's just the highest out of all of the, alter egos that you're going to find in the game. And in fact, there's not really any of them that I believe hit harder than her base damage, even with someone like Rasputin getting his evil alignment power mod, Okita Alter fighting against, say, a Sky Attribute person, or even Super Bunyan stacking a couple of the like buffs that she's able to give herself, you're still going to go to Meltryllis over here, because even though someone like Super Bunyan can start to eclipse her damage a little bit if you stack an obsessive amount of the like buffs that she gives, then at that point, you might as well have just used Melt, and instead of stacking that to reach her damage level, you would have instead have been stacking crit damage and been eviscerating the enemies, right? So there's really nothing, I mean, as you guys can tell, I'm trying to nitpick and trying to find something, but I absolutely love using this servant, and I cannot recommend them enough. The only issue right now is that it is the beginning of 2024 over here on the NA version of the game, and unfortunately, this is the year where people like Arcoid are coming out, who I know isn't like the best unit in the game. I mean, she's really, really strong, but she's also very popular, right? And I know that's going to contend for a lot of people's Saint Court. So there's also Summer 7, which has a ridiculous amount of very powerful units. Summer Ibuki might not be the best AoE arts farmer in the game anymore. You might give that to someone like Ruler Melusine, but she's still really good. And again, very cute. A lot of people might just summon because it's Big Snake Lady. There's Proto Merlin, who is definitely not needed, but is super, super nice if you can get her on your account, right? She's a very good, essentially, arts Merlin, and then Ruler Scotty, who pretty much, I don't want to say fixes a lot of Quick's issues, but allows them to have a much easier time, I would say, in the current meta. So if you were asking me, do I go and summon for Meltryllis, I would just kind of gauge your options here. I mean, if you're only going to be going for, say, Arcoid, you're looking at Anniversary, you're looking for Summer for a lot of those units, then you have enough time to kind of build up a decent bit of Saint Courts back if you want to chuck a couple of multis over at Melt's banner. But if you're also going to want to summon for Arjuna Altar, he's going to come out in a couple of weeks. If you want to go for Summer BB's rerun, which is going to happen in a good couple of months, or you really want to summon for Charlemagne, who's about 2 months away, Morgan's Return, which is about a month away, then it might be better off to pass up on Meltryllis, but that's a really hard pass for me to try to tell people to do, because again, like I've been saying in this video, there's not a lot that I could complain about Meltryllis. I mean, her refund is really good, her crits can do a lot of damage, she does really good base NP damage for basically free, and is always removing the enemy's buffs, so it doesn't matter if they're stacking crit damage, if they're stacking defensive buffs, even if the NP itself will not do damage because she has to remove the invincibility, her follow-up crits will now guaranteed hit the enemy, and the crits might do more damage than the NP would have because of Scotty giving her 100% quick crit damage. So again, very hard for me to tell people to not summon for this unit, but if you do see another banner with, I would say, a quote-unquote more high-value unit, and if you're asking for more of my meta take on things, I would probably go for someone like, say, Arjuna Altar or Morgan, because they're pretty much going to be your de facto go-to buster farmers. But maybe you don't have Kullian Sky, maybe you don't have Oberon, so you don't really care about Morgan or Arjuna Altar. Then, by all means, less of a reason to go for them, more of a reason to go for Meltryllis. Let's say you really don't care about Charlemagne, you really don't care about Kriemhild or, Ruler Moriarty, then you have more and more reason that you can go ahead and summon for Meltryllis. And I will tell you, as someone who uses Meltryllis a lot, she has never let me down. She is one of those servants that whenever I bring them, they just put in the Lord's work in those fights. They just were built correctly. Because, I mean, even her dodge skill that becomes a battery is on a 5-turn cooldown. So every 4 turns, essentially, because you use it and then you gotta wait 4 more turns for your survivability back, which Scotty is not giving you, and also get your battery. So even if you are running out of your buffs, then you could just get your battery back and keep firing your NP. She is a very phenomenal servant, and I do recommend going for her if you don't see anybody else that's kind of around that you really want to go summon on. But let me know if you're going to be summoning in the comments down below. Again, let me know if you guys enjoy more of these servant evaluations where I more or less just talk about my use of a servant, my history of using them, and giving a recommendation based on my experience playing for, what, a good like 7 years now. So let me know that in the comments down below. I do try to like to keep these a little bit shorter than the reviews. I can go on for like 16 minutes. These I'm trying to keep down to closer to 10 so they're a bit more digestible. But even now I'm rambling. So like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace late, guys.